So instead of letting them chew on the legs of your best furniture, you give them a cookie. Now, how many of you heard that the government now is going to start taking away your kids and your grandkids if they're 25 to 50 pounds overweight? Okay, it's coming. It's already started. The Journal of the American Medical Association, New England Journal of Medicine, Harvard Medical School, and many other medical schools are now recommending to the government that parents do such a bad job, they want the government to take your babies away from you if they're overweight by 25 pounds or more. I've been a consultant on certain cases with Lars. This one, this young kid here in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, his mother took him in to see the pediatrician when he was 5 years old because he's 150 pounds overweight. The pediatrician gave her a Frisbee with his name, telephone number, and office address on it, said, take him out in the park and run him around, throw the Frisbee around, make him exercise. She did. 2 years later, he goes back in, he's 250 pounds overweight, and so on, and here he is, 14 years old, he's 430 pounds overweight. Well, this time, the pediatrician got scared, called the social services, they arrest her and take the kid away from her. He's a ward of the state, and they do stomach bypass and all that kind of stuff. Now, who should have been arrested? The pediatrician should have been arrested because she did the right thing. She went to the doctor who's supposed to know what to do for kids with problems, and he says, exercise the kid with his advertising Frisbee? The pediatrician should have gone to jail here, not the mother, because she sought help. She sought professional help. So beware, they're coming after your kids if they're a little overweight. We're going to have to have some battles here. Now, how many of you heard of diabetes? Anybody here ever hear of diabetes, type 2 diabetes? Well, type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset type 2 diabetes. You can't call it that anymore. It was originally called adult onset type 2 diabetes because only people over age 50 got it. Well, today, 50% of the people with type 2 diabetes are below 25. Some of them are born with type 2 diabetes now. This is a simple mineral deficiency disease. It's not genetic. We've known how to prevent and cure this disease for 60 years. We've known how to prevent and cure type 2 diabetes for over 60 years. Let me say that one more time. It's not a genetic disease. We've known how to prevent and cure type 2 diabetes for over 60 years. It's a simple mineral deficiency disease. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but basically what you do is before conception, during pregnancy, from the moment the baby's born, we all need to get the 90 essential nutrients appropriate for body weight. And as the baby grows, the amounts have to go up because it's based on body weight, right? If you do that, we can make Missoula, Montana, the first type 2 diabetes-free town in 2 weeks. It takes 2 weeks. It's that simple. We can make, no, you got to hold it until the end here. I told you, no questions until the end. I have something from memory too. This is so simple it's scary. This is so simple it is scary. Now, to do this is going to cost about $3 a day per person. That's half or a third the cost of an espresso latte, mocha, polka, doka, loca, schmoka. Now, why won't doctors do this? Well, if you look on the other end of the scale, if you follow the doctor's method of managing diabetes instead of getting rid of it, you as a diabetic patient over 25 years are worth $4 million to the medical community. There are no laws requiring them to cure you, either ethical laws or legal legislative laws that require them to cure you, and there's a cure available. And so they don't, because they make more money in treating you and managing the disease as opposed to getting rid of it. So now you know more. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume they're not criminals and just say they're ignorant and don't know because they only had 30 minutes of nutrition and 14 years of medical school. But I can't imagine they don't know because they read the same journals I do. Okay? And so we're going to have to take over here. This is an F minus, 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 minus. If there's anything lower than an F10 minus, that's what they got here on diabetes. There should not be a single American and anybody in the industrialized world with diabetes. We can get rid of it in 2 weeks. It's that quick. Same principle as when you have iron deficiency anemia, you just give iron, it goes away. You don't give a bone marrow transplant. But that's what doctors would like to do if you'd let them. And people always say, well, Wallach, aren't you kind of rough on doctors? Well, I couldn't do that if they didn't give me the material, could I? In our heart of hearts, we'd like to believe that doctors are altruistic and they do these things because they believe it's good for us and they want to help us and so on. Well, in 1997, a study by the Health Insurance Association of America found that 75% of insurance fraud, which is a federal crime, is committed by providers, which is a code word for doctors. This was an anonymous survey, so 58% of the doctors responding to the survey felt comfortable enough to admit that they lie to get insurers to pay for procedures they don't even do. A U.S. Senate committee, back in October, a month ago, October 2011, a Senate committee, U.S. Senate committee, accuses companies of gaming Medicare. They're talking about home health services, they're talking about hospitals and emergency rooms, they're talking about clinics where there's multiple doctors in a clinic. And basically what happens is this: if you go in there for a strain and your ankle's all puffed up and black and blue because you got some blood in there and everything is painful, they'll take an x-ray and they'll say, you know, we need to have an expert look at this because we're just not quite sure. So we're going to check you into the hospital tonight. Instead of sending you home with an ice pack on your ankle and have you see your doctor tomorrow, we're going to put you in the hospital. Oh my gosh, we need to put you in a CAT scan because we have to see if there's microfractures in there. And they take something that should have been a $200 bill to $40,000 because you have insurance, you have Medicaid, you have Medicare. And these doctors, they've learned in the Senate committee, will bill 8 different agencies to pay them for doing the one service. They bill everybody they can and get paid by 8 different services for doing one thing on you. Now that's fraud. Now you do that, you go to jail, but they get a walk. Doesn't that make you feel warm and fuzzy? You're supporting the medical community? It's bad enough that even the U.S. senators can figure it out. That was a joke. Okay. I know, it took a while. Okay, let's look at this a different way. Let's look at outcomes here to see, well, you know, with all the nastiness that goes out in the medical system, maybe there's some good here. Well, let's see how long we live. If everybody in America dies at age 3 months, there's not going to be a next generation, is there? But if everybody lives to be 150, that would be an A+, wouldn't it? So let's have a look. In 1990, the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta, Georgia, a federal agency that tracks these kind of things, looked at the top 32 industrialized nations. Remember I said industrialized nations, not the top 32 nations, but the top 32 industrialized nations. Japan came in number 1 in longevity at 79.1. The French came in 11th at 75.9. We came in 17th at 75. This is an F because we spend more money for health care than all the other nations of the world combined annually. We come in 17th. And you wouldn't tolerate that in any other industry, would you? Let's have a look. 10 years later, they redid it. 10 years later, they redid it. So in 2000, the same agency, only this time the World Health Organization jumped in. So it was the Center for Disease Control again and the World Health Organization. Japan remained number 1, but they dropped from 79.1 down to 74.5. The French moved up from 11th to 3rd, but they dropped from 75.9 down to 73.1. And this movement by the French from 11th to 3rd is called by American medical doctors the French paradox. They call it the French paradox because the French consume more fat per person than any other culture on earth. Ladies, can you imagine a French chef cooking in canola oil and margarine? No, they cook everything in butter and cream and lard and eggs, all the stuff we're not supposed to eat, right? And yet they moved up from 11th to 3rd in longevity. By contrast, fat is the Antichrist in America. Next to the devil, there's nothing worse that anybody can figure out than fat. Okay? I mean, there's entrepreneurs that have come up with a whole anti-fat thing. There's egg beaters, get egg white omelets, right? And there's all these soy milk and rice dream and all this kind of stuff. And there's pho cheese, you know, it's really wild stuff here. And if you can't get your blood cholesterol down below 200, oh, I don't want that. I want a bottle. That'll get knocked over. I want a bottle. You want to take that with you? Please take it with you. I see disaster. Thank you. Okay. Now, she's trying to be nice and helpful, but I appreciate that. But when you have an open glass like that, you know the odds are it's going to get dumped on my material. I just know it. Okay. All right. Murphy never dies. Very good. Murphy's Law. Whatever can happen will happen. All right. And so did you know that there's 12 companies that make cholesterol-lowering drugs in America, 12 pharmaceutical companies? Each one of them makes a profit every month of $2 billion to $5 billion. Each one of these 12 companies makes $2 to $5 billion profit every month in America because you are so paranoid about cholesterol. Well, with all that, in that same 10-year period, we dropped from 17th in longevity to 24th. The system sucks. The recipe sucks. That's an F minus, 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 minus. Now here's what even makes it worse. Listen up here. This is what makes it worse. There's not a single disease that is caused by elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides. People even stopped chewing their gum when I said that. They were so shocked. There's not a single disease that you can show me that is caused by elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides. You've wasted your time, money, and energy worrying about your cholesterol. There's not a single disease that's caused by elevated blood. Show me one. There isn't one. If you read the words carefully, they say elevated blood cholesterol is a risk factor for heart disease. Doesn't cause it, it's a risk factor. Now, let me tell you. If you have elevated blood cholesterol, whatever that means, and I'll give you a rationale here in a second for that statement. If you have elevated blood cholesterol, it means you either have diabetes or you have low thyroid, hypothyroidism. You can have deficiency or ratio problems between omega-3s, 6s, and 9s. You can have deficiencies of chromium and vanadium, which are two trace minerals that control blood fats and blood sugar. You can have deficiencies of niacin. Remember, the health food industries and little health food store owners and herbalists and naturopathic doctors and all these people have been yelling about niacin forever for lowering cholesterol, right? Well, the doctors, medical doctors, oh, that's all quackery and charlatanism. That can't be. Well, now the pharmaceutical industry came out with Niaspan, which is just a time-release niacin, vitamin B3, time-release, and they charge your insurance company $150 for one little bottle, and you can buy about the same number of capsules of niacin for $8. Are you getting a picture here, folks? Okay. Okay. This came out in 2005, 5 years later. They didn't wait 10 years this time. It was 5 years later. And for the entire summer of 2005, June, July, and August, this was on the stands. It was like $5. It was a half-inch thick special issue on health. And in page 10, right-hand column, 2/3 of the way down, there was this part of a paragraph. America has built the world's highest tech medical system. I don't think you can argue with that. They got robots now doing hip surgeries, heart surgeries, prostate cancer surgeons. Robots do this now. Why is that? Well, that's because all the insurance companies got together and they gave hundreds of millions of dollars to engineering schools like MIT and so forth to convert automobile assembly robots into surgical robots. Now, why did they do that? That's because doctors were drunk so much. Let's give Vivian a hand. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. That's because, according to Harvard Medical School, and Lucien Lepay, the director of their Department of Public Health, said, and they did a survey, a blind survey, 52% of medical doctors are intoxicated on alcohol, street drugs, or prescription drugs during their waking day. So you go to an emergency room, 50% of the time you're going to a doctor who's gorked out on something. Okay? And so that's why they cut off the wrong leg, or they botch up a surgery. And so they had the robots do this because the robots don't get drunk. So they don't have to give so many settlements, right? That's why they did that. Well, America has built the world's highest tech medical system, and for whatever reason, you can't argue with it. There's a comma here, though, and it says, yet the nation, America, now ranks 46th in life expectancy behind Japan, Singapore, Canada, and virtually all of Europe and Scandinavia. So in a 15-year period, went from 17th in longevity to 46th following the doctor's recipe. That's an F minus, 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 minus. Okay? You would not tolerate this in any other industry. Why would anybody want to listen to anything they had to say? Oh, my doctor is so wonderful. I get free samples every once in a while. Ha, ha, ha. It gets worse. This was a full-page article in the USA Today, February 2007. I had to chop it up a little bit to get it on the 8.5 by 11 sheet because this was a full-page newspaper article. You can tell by the title there's something interesting going to happen here. Patient, protect thyself. The data I'm going to share with you comes from the Journal of the American Medical Association, the most prestigious medical journal, certainly in America, maybe the world. Also the Center for Disease Control, again, that federal agency out of Atlanta, Georgia. And what they said was this: each year in America, medical doctors kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their patients in their workplace. Each year in America, medical doctors kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their patients, their customers in their workplace. They don't even get an OSHA ticket. 5.8 million in hospitals, 9.2 million in the private offices and clinics, and they get a walk. People keep going to them. Now, what would happen in the World Trade Tower, the World Trade Tower construction site? What would happen if 10 plumbers a day were being killed? OSHA would shut that thing down in one day, and it would be closed until they figure out why it was happening. I mean, people would be fined millions of dollars, right, left, and center. This goes on year after year after year after year, and we just keep paying the increased prices every year. Why do you do it? It's an insane process. You wouldn't do that in any other industry. Now, one of our associates gave me this. This is a story from 5 years ago in an Orlando, Florida hospital. This is one of the injuries. You know, killed, injured, and infected. This is one of the injuries. This gal here, 28 years old, goes in to have her first baby. Oh, that's the Russian version. She goes in to have her first baby. And when she wakes up from anesthesia, you know she's in trouble right away. She wakes up from anesthesia. And they had cut her arms off at the elbows. And they cut her legs off at the groin. She says, oh my gosh, my baby. And they said, your baby's perfect, don't worry about it. And she said, well, what'd you do to me? And they said, well, you're going to have to sue us to find out. So she and her husband sued the doctor in the hospital. They found out the doctor was drunk. One of those drunk doctors. And he read her chart wrong. Instead of delivering her baby, he cut her arms and legs off. Because he thought she was the one that was in there for flesh-eating strep. He went out and played golf. Never had his license suspended, never lost one penny of income, and this is 18 months later. She'll never be able to hold her baby's face in her hands. She'll never be able to wipe her own bottom or eat with a fork because the doctor was drunk on duty. Now, he's done that a second time for a woman who went in for kidney stones. I don't know if he has a thing against women. I don't know what his thing is. But this guy is really a bad negative there in Orlando, Florida, in this hospital. Well, if I were her daddy or her husband, I'd make me a color placard, about 3 foot by 8 foot of that. I'd make maybe 100 of them. And I put a thing in here, Dr. So-and-so did this to my daughter, my wife, and I want you to boycott this hospital until they fire him. Yeah. I think by the time a week goes by, I'll get 100 people to be carrying that plaque around with me, right? And so there has to be consequences to these things. If people say, oh, isn't that a shame, and then go on about their business, just like this Penn State thing. Report it, nobody does anything. I mean, if I walk into a shower and a coach is having sex with a 10-year-old boy, I'd knock his lights out, right? I'm not going to go tattle on him. He's going to wish I would have. Okay? So there has to be consequences. Now, these two ladies were killed in a private office, doctor's office, for having liposuction instead of using my weight loss plan. They decided getting their fat sucked out was easier, and the doctor kills them in his office. Their doctor, like many booming cosmetic surgery field, wasn't board certified, but there's no law to stop him. Because doctors can do anything. There's no limit to what a doctor can do. They can do everything. By legislation, we have allowed them to be able to do anything. Okay? And all he did, just like this previous girl that the arms and legs were cut off, the doctor gives the survivors his card and says, call my insurance man and you guys settle. And he goes on and does it to somebody else. There's no consequences. The system sucks and we have to change it. This came out in 1998. Again, the study by the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta, Georgia, a federal agency. And what they said was that each year in America, medical doctors infect 2 million customers, 2 million patients in hospitals each year. They go in for non-invasive things like ultrasounds, CAT scans, stress tests, x-rays, that kind of stuff. And they infect 2 million of these people. Of those 2 million that are infected each year, 90,000 die. 90,000 die every year because the doctor doesn't wash his hands. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard of a farrowing barn. This is where pigs go to have their babies. And when pigs have their babies, it's called farrowing. I don't know the derivation of that, but it's called farrowing. And in a farrowing barn, you could have 100 farrowing pens of 100 sows, 100 female pigs having their babies there in these individual pens. They're little individual suites. And if you don't work and live on that farm, you go in that barn. You don't even go in the pen with the pigs, but you walk in front of them. You got to go and take a shower with disinfectant soap in a special clean room. You got to tear open a bag and put on disinfected coveralls and boots, gloves, mask, hat. And in front of each pig pen, this farrowing pen, is a 4-inch deep, 2 foot by 2 foot, 4-inch deep pan of disinfectant with a brush. You're supposed to step in that, take this brush and wash off your boots before you go in front of the next pen to prevent dragging infection from one place to the next. And then perhaps lose these baby pigs and their mamas from infection. By contrast, I want you to think about it. These doctors, both male and females, wear the same white coat room to room to room. Wear the same shoes from room to room to room. Same trousers, same skirts, same pantyhose, room to room to room. They wear their surgical scrubs down into the cafeteria where they sit on a chair where some baby had poopy diapers, E. coli. Then they go back and do surgery. Or they go from room to room to room, whether it's a private practice or the hospital, they go from room to room to room. And you look at their jackets, they're not snow white like they've just been recently bleached. You can look at them, they have blood and poop and pee and pus and snot all over those things. They're dragging this from room to room to room. We treat our pigs better than we do our people. That's why this happens. So we got to take control here. We actually have a skin sanitizer called PureWorks. If you have to have, I hope you don't, but if you have to have somebody go to a hospital, I want you to stand in the doorway with PureWorks, say, strip to your naked skin and spray them all over with PureWorks before they can come in the room. And you'll save your loved one. Well, I couldn't do that. He's a doctor. You better do it because he is a doctor. It gets worse. This came out last year, almost exactly last year, November 2010. Hospital care failed for some patients. That's kind of vanilla. This is a little scarier. Results of Medicare study alarming. There's nothing more scary than alarming. Okay? Now the study was done by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General. In this case, it is essentially the auditor for Medicare. What they said was that each month in America, medical doctors kill 15,000 Medicare patients each month in hospitals. Medical doctors kill 15,000 Medicare patients each month in hospitals. We still keep bringing our loved ones to the hospital because in our minds and our hearts we hope and pray that this is a place of safety and health. But statistics shows that it's not. I remember 60 Minutes, you know, every Sunday afternoon. How many remember Andy Rooney? Now, he retired a couple of months ago at age 92. A month later, he was dead. People, oh, wasn't it terrible he passed away? Well, he didn't pass away. He was murdered. Now, I've read 15 of these articles, online, newspapers all over the country, and every one of them says the same thing. Andy Rooney was killed by complications of a minor procedure. He was killed by complications of a minor procedure? Well, why don't they tell you what this minor procedure was? Well, I guarantee you here's why. You ever heard of colonoscopic exams where they put a garden hose up your rump and they look around in there? Yeah. I'm sure they say, look, Andy, you're 92 years old. You better let us check you out for colon cancer. They put this garden hose up his rump and the surgeon's drunk, starts poking around in there, punches it through his intestines, and he dies of peritonitis, an infection of his belly cavity. If he just stayed away from him, he'd still be alive. But they talked him into this minor procedure that we do every day and is safe. Right. Wound up killing him. Sure got quiet in here. Now, if they can kill an Andy Rooney with his high profile, See, in these articles they say, oh, you know, he was such a curmudgeon. His whole thing was to complain about things, right? And we can see him up in heaven complaining that he can't rest, he can't sleep because the harps that the angels are playing is too loud. But that's not what Andy Rooney would complain about. Andy Rooney would complain about being talked into a minor procedure that wound up killing him. That's what he would complain about. Okay, this came out in August of this year, Newsweek magazine cover article. Newsweek magazine cover article. Now this guy is obviously not anesthetized. Here's 5 surgeons ready to stick their scalpel into him, because if they stick the scalpel into him and he dies, they get paid the full amount of the procedure. So they can't wait to stick you, because then if you die, then they get paid the full amount. If you die from anesthesia before they stuck their knife in you, they don't get paid. So they want to stick their knife in you as quickly as possible. The one word that will save your life in a hospital. We go to the centerfold, and this was August of 2011. You go to the centerfold. Remember, this is not me. This is Newsweek magazine, not me. Here's the patient. Here's the patient. And you can see he's in his hospital gown, barefoot in the hospital, which is probably a no-no. All the germs all over the floor. And so he's saying, no! Now we have this new experimental drug we want to give you. No! We want to give you a CAT scan. No! It's time for, you know, to go get an enema. No! Now I'm going to get 2 or 3, you know, other opinions before I let you do something weird to me. That alone will save your life, because you're learning them that you're not just another piece of baggage that they can just throw around, and so you're going to have to be a little careful with you, right? Now, why is he doing that? I mean, what is he afraid of? Why is this guy terrified? Why is he screaming no in the hospital? Now, here are 8 specialists and surgeons and an anesthesiologist coming at him. Now, do they look like they're there to, as my dad used to say, hip him? No, they're not there to hip him. They're there to get into his insurance policy. They all want a piece of the action now, because they're all hungry, because all the jobs went away. Nobody's got health benefits anymore. So these doctors are now starving to death. And so they're shouldering each other out, competing with each other to get their fingernails into you before the other doctor gets in there. That's what this picture shows you, right? Now this is not me. This is Newsweek magazine. I just thought that was very profound. Look at those hands. I want your money. I want your insurance money. Give me your credit card. I'll take your credit card. I mean, you go in for help. Even you're unconscious. The first thing you say, they're unconscious. They say, what kind of insurance do you have? Now, here's another problem. We have 80 million baby boomers coming along. Last year, the first 5 million of them hit Social Security. And the reason why we have all these lawmakers scurrying around regardless of policy or party, like cockroaches when you turn the light on, because they all took all the money out of Social Security. So when Social Security first started, 70 people were supporting one retiree. Today it's one person supporting 70 retirees, and it's unsustainable. What makes it worse is all the elected officials have taken the money out of your Social Security file, and there's no money there anymore. To build bridges to nowhere, to widen highways that have no traffic on them, so they can say, during the re-election thing, I brought home 500 jobs last 4 years, and I want you to vote for me to get me back in. They used your money, your Social Security money, to get those jobs. Okay? So we have a problem. So what is the basic problem here? Why is the medical system collapsing? Why are we in real trouble here? How many remember that 3-way election, presidential election back in 1992? Old Bush 41, Billy Clinton, and Ross Perot. Remember that? Some of you are old enough to remember that. Now I want you to think about this very seriously, because it was a very profound election, because the political football at the time was NAFTA. NAFTA. Some people call it NAFTA-shafta. And the discourse between old Bush 41 and Billy Clinton was how to best use NAFTA to save, America. so we can get more of our products out into the world. That was kind of their concept. Well, Ross Perot, with his big elephant ears and his whiny little Texas accent, well, if anybody signs NAFTA, you're going to hear this giant sucking sound as all the jobs leave America. Has anybody seen that story rewritten or resurfaced or brought up saying, you know, Ross Perot predicted this in 1992 and it's just happened? Now, why did that happen? Well, when they signed that, that law gave industry permission to get tax breaks for hiring people outside the country. That's what NAFTA did. It gave them permission to get legal tax breaks for hiring people out of this country. And they immediately took all the manufacturing and assembly jobs out of this country because they didn't have to supply medical benefits. That's what NAFTA did. And Ross Perot warned about it, and everybody, oh, he's a nut. Where's American jobs going to go? Well, they went out of this country, as he predicted in 1992. So we have a huge problem here. No more medical benefits. Doctors are starving now. Doctors are starving. Yep. And here's one of the consequences. They're kicking out Medicare patients. They're not going to take care of Medicare patients anymore. Okay? So they're kicking them out starting January 1st. And also, people who are on fixed income, didn't have any medical care, would go into emergency rooms and they would use the coffee in the emergency room. They walk around the air-conditioned building, you know, during the summertime, and the heated building during the wintertime to get their exercise. If they want to get their blood pressure taken and their blood sugar checked, so they didn't have to buy the kit and pay for the little strips and everything. And the hospital would then send the bill to Medicare and Medicaid, who would pay it. Well, they're broke now because nobody's putting any money in there, and there's only one working person taking care of 70 retirees or on welfare or on unemployment. And so they've cut it down to, instead of 3 days a week, you're able to come to the hospital emergency room. Now you can only do 10 days a year in Florida. In Hawaii. In Florida, it's 45 days. Mississippi is 30 days. Arkansas, 24 days. Alabama, 16 days. Most of the states are falling in 10 to 15 days is the limit. If you want to be in a hospital longer than 10 or 15 days, you got to pay them cash on the front end now. They're not billing anybody. Okay? Baby boomers, again, this came out 2 months ago, September this year. This is an AARP report. 15.6 million baby boomers, 15.6 million baby boomers in the last 2 years went from being middle class to below poverty. They went from a 2-income family to a 1-income family. They went from a 2-income family to a no-income family. There's been 5 million houses foreclosed upon, and people who are good Americans who paid their mortgages until they got laid off. Okay? That's all because of NAFTA allowed these companies to ship the jobs out and get tax breaks for hiring people outside this country. We're the only crazy people who do such things. No other country in the world does this. You all heard of these censuses that get taken every 10 years? We have a census that's done every 10 years. And right now we're the 3rd largest population in the world. China is 1.8 billion people. India is 1.2 billion. And we're 300 million. We're like 1/5 the size of China. I guarantee you the next 10 years we won't be number 3 anymore, because all these third world countries now, with all this economy and new money from all our jobs going over there, guess what? They're being able to buy better food and so forth, and they're having more babies. 20 babies per family now. 20 babies per family. You know, 20 different pregnancies. Now, they're not having litters, or, you know. Okay, now, to me, though, the most important piece of that census was this. They said the average black man in America lives to be 62, the average white man in America lives to be 75, and the average Hispanic man lives to be 80.6. Now, wait a minute. All the other surveys said that only wealthy people live the longest. The most educated people live the longest. Well, the Hispanics have 28.6% unemployment. They have the least amount of education of any ethnic group in the United States. They get paid the least. They're willing to take a lot of these jobs and picking stuff in the field for $3 an hour and all that kind of stuff. So none of this fits. So what's going on here? What was discovered is this. Because the blacks have been told incorrectly and fraudulently that all their diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure and arthritis and cancer and obesity is due to genetics, they got the terrible black gene. If you marry the medical system and use our pills and potions and use our surgeries, we'll be able to squeeze a couple more years of life for you out of this terrible black gene. Stick with us and we'll help you. And so they've overused the medical system and been killed more often. By contrast, the Hispanics are still using grandma's home remedies and do not use the medical system. And so they're not killed as often. This is pretty revealing when you think about it. Now, as I told you earlier, cholesterol does not cause any disease. What is the normal blood cholesterol level for human beings? 20, let's see here, it'd be 220 to 270 is normal. 220 to 270 is normal. But every doctor will tell you that's too high because they know you can't get below that with diet and exercise. That'll give them an excuse to write you a prescription for cholesterol-lowering drugs, and then they get a little kickback every time you fulfill a prescription. You don't think they have incentives to do that? Even their staff gets caviar and steaks and all that kind of stuff every Friday. The drug companies come in there and buy the really high-end food for these people and buy them tickets to Disneyland and all that kind of stuff to the staff of the clinics. So they're not completely clean either. Well, this is what causes blocked arteries, not cholesterol. How many of you heard of trans fatty acids? Okay, trans fatty acids as oxidized oils. If you don't know what an oxidized oil is, take an apple of any kind, Gala apple, Granny Smith, you know, whatever. Cut the apple in half, turn the cut surface off, come back in an hour and look at it. What's happened to that pearly white flesh of that apple in that hour? It's turned brown. Everybody knows that. Well, that's the oils in that apple oxidizing and turning brown. Now, you know in an apple there's not much oil. There's 0.0000000000000000000000001% oil. And you can see it with your naked eye oxidizing in just a few moments. Well, every oil you use, even old nuts, you go from a bulk food store and you buy some bulk nuts, you take them home, you taste them, they're kind of old. The oils and the fats in that nut has oxidized, turned into a trans fatty acids. It'll plug your arteries and kill you. Now, in 1971, I wrote the first article on this subject because when you do thousands of autopsies, you can ask the data any question you want, right? So the question I asked was, who or what individuals have the worst plugged arteries? Not from blood clots, but from scar tissue and cholesterol and saturated fat and plaque and that kind of stuff. Vegans or meat eaters? And with special stains to look at cholesterol and saturated fat and scar tissue and calcium, guess who had the worst plugged arteries? Vegans or meat eaters? Vegans! Because they put oil in everything. Olive oil, coconut oil, sesame seed oil, sunflower seed oil, and it all oxidizes, clog their arteries. That's why there's no flourishing colonies of second and third generation vegans. There's no flourishing colonies of vegans with all these rosy cheeked kids running around. It's a political statement, not a good nutritional plan. Now, if you want to be a successful vegan, you got to supplement with the 90 essential nutrients. I have lots of successful vegans who are on my program. These guys are all martial arts guys, are 6'4", 240 pounds, and they can knock this building down without even hitting the building. Just moving their hand, the whole building falls down. These guys, but they've been with me for 25 years supplementing with the 90 essential nutrients. You'll see why that's important even for vegans today. Okay? So it's fried foods, it's processed meats with nitrates, nitrites, oils such as margarines, mayonnaise, salad dressings, cooking oils that clog our arteries. Now, when I was a kid, we didn't have salad dressings. We didn't have any salad dressings. What we did was, for a salad, they didn't pluck the leaves off of things and make a salad out of it. We had a wedge of a head of lettuce or a wedge of a head of cabbage. Some of you may remember that. And my grandmother would take pickled beets and grate them onto that cabbage, that little wedge of cabbage. She'd grate some cheese, right? She'd sprinkle it with some cracked peppercorns, and that's how we ate our salads. That was our salad. There was no such thing as a salad dressing. Well, when the boys came home from Europe in the Second World War, everybody wanted olive oil like they used in Italy and Greece. That's how this began to happen. So what we're doing now is a very short, it's only like 60 years old. It's not like it's been our entire history of human beings. I mean, I guarantee you cavemen didn't have Kraft salad dressing or wishbone salad dressing. They didn't drink olive oil like it was going out of style. They didn't cook in it. It's not only fried chicken, but it's also fried fish. Captain D's is not innocent. Well, my wife and I, and my dear wife is a microsurgeon who taught at Harvard Medical School, and I actually met her at the Texas Medical Center where she was working with DeBakey and Cooley, two great heart transplant surgeons. I met her there, and she and I together over the last 10 years put together this book called Immortality. There's some of those out there in the hall. Immortality. We spent 10 years looking at the top 20 longevity cultures on Earth, trying to find out why they did better than us. Now, the amazing thing about this, ladies and gentlemen, when we did this research, we took the data from National Geographic, we took it from anthropology studies and anthropology journals and big universities, because we didn't want to do it ourselves. It would take 50 years, it would take millions and billions of dollars, and nobody would believe us anyway. So we took the data from these big universities and from the National Geographic, and we credit them for that source of information. But we rearranged it in such a way that you can see a picture now, where before there's just a scattered article here, a scattered article there. We put it all together. What we found out about the top 20 longevity cultures is this. Number one, they're all third world cultures. They're illiterate. They have no access to doctors, clinics, or hospitals. Remember the Hispanics. They don't use the medical system. Okay? They don't have roads. They don't have pharmaceuticals. They don't have private insurance or government insurance. If you looked on a chart, a flow chart of the places on Earth that had everything you'd want for medical care, you would never go to these top 20 places for longevity because they don't have any medical care of any kind. Grandma is the medical care, right? So, there's 25 common threads these people have. They have, first of all, 40 times 100-year-olds we do. They have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. No doctors, they have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. These people have 100-year-old per 250 of their population. According to Harvard Medical School, we have 100-year-old per 10,000. These people live to be an average of 90 in a healthful way. We live to be 75 in a sickly way on the average. So what's going on here? Well, we took the top 5, what we thought was the top 5 of these 25 common threads, and we put them as icons on the cover of the book here. If you understand these 5 things, you'll add 25 to 50 healthful years of your life, and you'll never even have to read the book. So I'm going to explain them to you, because they're that valuable. First of all, how many of you have ever gone to your grandparents' house, your parents' house, and they still had a wood stove? Anybody remember those days when they had wood stoves? What did they do with the ashes every morning? Where did the wood ashes go every morning? They went where? In the garden. They went in the garden. Now, wood ashes are not ashes. That's a misnomer. The wood ashes are actually the minerals that are left when you burn away the carbon in the wood. Sometimes if you pull the damper down and shut off the air supply, the fire will smolder cold during the night, and you might have a little bit of carbon in there. Around the edge it might look black or gray. But pure, quote, wood ashes, unquote, are really just powdered minerals that are left when you burn away the carbon in the wood. Now, these plant minerals would go out in the garden, and the okra and the tomatoes and the onions and garlic and the sweet potatoes and squash and corn and cucumbers and all the other stuff you grow in the garden would suck these minerals up, and you'd eat the vegetables and grains, and you get your minerals in that fashion. Now, how many of you are still eating totally out of your garden, do not go to a grocery store, and you're still putting your wood ashes into your garden? What did you replace that with? Nothing! That's why you're in trouble. And that's why these people have 40 times 100-year-olds we do. Then there's another source of minerals we used to have. And I like to express this to you using an old, ancient Dutch fairy tale, Jack and the Beanstalk. Remember Jack and the Beanstalk?